So, top 5 most common interview mistakes that programmers make. So, number 1, they write messy code. So make sure your code is clean. You could be innovative, you may know your stuff, but if the code is messy, it's going to be really hard for the interviewer to read. Number 2, having technical jargons on your resume that you either don't know, you've touched it once, or you're claiming to be an expert in those. And a lot of times, managers will challenge you by just nitpicking those programming languages that are listed there, and they'll just start digging deep into them. So please make sure, the general rule of thumb that I always recommend, if you worked on it a few times, you worked on it on different projects, it's perfectly fine to talk about, to leave them on the resume. But if you touched it once, or you're maybe playing around with it at home on a personal project, I wouldn't write them on a resume, because at some point that you're going to get called out. Number 3, you want to make sure you're interacting with the interviewer. So for example, if you're missing a question, or you're not sure of how to tackle a certain question, instead of just sitting there quietly, make sure you engage with the interviewer, talk about it, and just be honest. Say, look, I'm not sure about this, my thinking is this, how should I approach this? And you'll be surprised that a lot of times hiring managers, they will give you tips. They'll throw hints that you need to pay attention to, and then piggyback on them. So, they're not expecting you to know every single coding exercise. They're not expecting you to be perfect, but they're really more concerned about the approach. The other big thing that I get is confidence. A lot of time folks just lack that confidence in an interview, especially the junior developers. Managers will sometimes give you on purpose a wrong question to solve. And you need to just take a step back, ask yourself, just be confident. If something doesn't make sense, feel free to talk about it. And just, because again, they're throwing these things at you to see how engaging you are and how well you're handling this pressure. And the other big one, the other mistake that I hear all the time is not practicing code on a piece of paper or a whiteboard. Because in most interviews, most technical interviews, they'll be done, when you go for an interview, you're not gonna have a computer. You're not gonna be in an IDE environment. They'll either have you do a coding exercise on a whiteboard or a piece of paper, and if you're not used to that, you're gonna stumble. And you may even get nervous when you're told to go on a whiteboard to do a coding exercise. So I always recommend to the developers that I talk to, it's good to practice writing a code on a piece of paper and on a whiteboard. I'm sure there are a couple of others that I can go on, but those are probably the top 5 that I hear most frequently from managers.